Is Witold online?
Hi, Witold here from Witold Sound Auberge. Let me invite you today to another exciting meeting. This time I would like you to meet Mathew Thiem, the man behind the console, with whom I worked on soundtrack of my latest orchestral work, Issund, performed and recorded in July by Cape Town Philharmonic Orchestra. Hi, Mathew. Before going to talk about our work, I would like you to talk a little bit about your cooperation with Philharmonic Orchestra and cinematic scoring, because that's probably very interesting for my listeners.
Milestone Studios. So we are based in Cape Town, South Africa, and we have a partnership with a company called Cinemagic Orchestra, or Cinemagic Scoring rather, and they book sessions with us, and they often have shared sessions with composers that would book time through them, and then we get the Philharmonic Orchestra in and we record them in the studio, of course.
For how long you work with them?
I'm not quite sure. I think we've been working with them since 2019, round about there. It was before my time actually, since I've started working at the studio, but I think since 2019.
How you find this cooperation? Is it challenging? As a job as recording?
It is challenging, yeah. It has its challenges. There's a lot of pressure, especially time pressure. We don't have time to actually make any mistakes. We have to be well prepared so that things can flow as smoothly as possible, because we have so many people waiting for us.
So let's go to what we have done together to work on my music. Some of my viewers who try to mix their stuff at home as well. So whatever a good information or a good hint you could share with me, it would be probably interesting for them as well. So how did you record my music? I'm talking right now about the preparation and mic setup and recording process. How did it happen?
Yeah, so that's where a lot of the time gets spent actually. So once the session is actually booked, we get all the MIDI files from the composers as well as the mock-ups, and that's pretty much where it starts. So I'll prep my Pro Tools sessions, I'll import all of that information, and then from there onwards I'll start to decide, okay, which mics am I going to use, what setup am I going to use, and it all depends on the size of the orchestra. For your piece specifically, the setup that we commonly do, or what we did for your session, is we mic up each string section. So the first violins we mic up, the seconds, the violas, the cellos, the double basses. For our setup we often use 2 pencil mics, condenser microphones that we put or place above each section. It depends on what mic it depends on who's actually doing the session, but in my preference I have a preference of mics that I would use. But we mic up each section, and then we have room mics to capture the whole orchestra, and then we have mics set up on the roof of the studio as well as on the sides of the studio, just so that we can capture a wider image. The reasoning for the microphones above each section is so that we have control to make that section louder or softer depending on the composer's preference or how the music has been written. And then of course we have the microphones that's pretty much set up in the middle of the room to capture the whole orchestra as one.
And how and the recording process, I mean, in this particular model of recording, it goes by sections, then it goes by takes. Did you set up your recording process as continuous? So everything on, and then you wait, and people are playing and recording everything, or you had to intervene in the meantime?
So I had to intervene quite a bit. So we obviously start off with the strings. So because our room is not big enough to accommodate a full orchestra, we start off with the string section first, because they are playing the main parts. So we get them laid down first, and then after that I have to reset the whole room. So pretty much take out all the chairs, get away all the microphones that I'm not going to use, and then set up for the next section, which would often be the woodwind section. And then after that we'll do brass, and then from there we'll do percussion.
It's pretty a lot of work, pretty much work for a session. what kind of DAW or digital audio workstation do you use?
So I use Pro Tools. It's an industry standard DAW. It's commonly used across the whole industry. It's not really user friendly, if I must say. It took me quite a bit to learn. When I first saw Pro Tools, I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know how to import one piece of audio. That was back in my day when I still studied. But yeah, it's quite a complicated workstation, but it's got a really nice workflow for big sessions. I would highly recommend using Pro Tools for large scale recordings.
Well, I have a kind of side question, because as you know, when we are working, you know that I mix my music in my studio as well. Sometimes recorded in studio, sometimes recorded by other orchestra, when I decided I would prefer mix them myself. And I use Cubase. Have you ever tried Cubase?
I have tried Cubase, yes. I've tried a few things, but in my experience of learning Cubase, it's a little bit frustrating when you have your own workflow in one DAW and then having to move on to the next one or a new one that you're not familiar with, and then wanting to work as fast as you normally do in the DAW that you are used to. It becomes a little bit frustrating because you can't get the result that you're looking for.
You know, I just meant the comparison between the doubtful user-friendliness of Pro Tools that I've noticed when we worked. And I worked with Cubase for the last 20 years. So, of course, for me, it's easy because I read on it that long. But in parallel, I've compared other DAWs like Logic Pro, that after many years of having it, I still don't understand how exactly they have planned, you know, all the workflow. It's not clear. It's not good enough. It's not for me. I've tried Studio One, which is absolutely out of my question. So what I'm saying is that perhaps for smaller projects, Cubase would be easier because it's very user friendly. It's very straightforward. The logic of organization is trivial. You know it once and you know it for always. But it is just a side question. And who's Pro Tools producer? Avid?
Yes, it's Avid.
It's Avid, yes, that's why, because they are the real problem is that Avid has the tendency to go towards Windows, Microsoft Windows, and that makes the whole stuff not very reliable. While Cubase, of course, is on both, but when it sits on a Mac, forget any problems. I never had. Before I moved to Mac, which is about 20 years ago, I had my studio on Microsoft machine, and I had to reinstall everything pretty much every year, because after a certain time the machine got its own life, began deleting stuff. I said no more. But that is once again a side comment. How did you make my first version of the music?
So the first version was quite a basic one. We've learned that working with composers, especially with the orchestra sessions, that it's a lot easier for us to do a little basic mix and then send it through to the composer so that we can get their feedback, as well as understand what the music's going to be used for and what direction they want the music to go into.
Just for the knowledge of our listeners, how many raw files did you get after recording?
Oh yeah, so this is a breakdown of how the session looks. All the different sections are in folders within the session, and then over here you can see where everything's labeled. So violin 1 has 2 microphones. I think there's easily about 80 tracks within this project, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot going on in here. My
question was about individual files. If you just stop for a moment, you're scrolling. It really doesn't matter. I take the first cello and I see that within one track there is about 20 events, maybe more than that. So altogether, if you count every event on every track, it would be 9,000?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, I understand your question now. Yes, pretty much 9,000 different audio files. Yes, I remember now when I sent you all of the separate files. It was about 900 and some 9,000.
Yeah. So of course every They were all, as we can see on the screen, they were all organized into tracks, and then further they were organized into takes. That's once again, for me, what I have in front of me on the screen is far from being user-friendly. Of course, when you work on it for years, you know it inside out, and this unfriendliness becomes secondary. But if I had to learn this stuff, I'd probably refuse. Cool. Let's come back to our own faces on screen. Okay. We both know that once you sent me the first version of the soundtrack, I sent you comments. Then we tried to exchange comments on writing. It didn't work at all because, of course, it's the question of communication. Then we began working online together, and this sped up the process drastically. Care to explain why?
I think the main reason for that is there's a how can I say, maybe a lack of understanding sometimes when communicating via social platforms. That I personally don't like. I think it's best to be face to face with people. Therefore you can understand each other. Therefore you can also get to know one another. I think it's a lot better than typing everything on an email and not really understanding each other or the direction that the composer wants the music to go into. I also think that with us, in our particular case, we had quite a big time difference, which also dragged things out a little bit. I think it wasted useful time. But once we got onto Zoom, things speed up because we can communicate directly with one another. If there's something that needs to be changed, you can tell me right then and there, and I don't have to wait, say, 8 hours, 9 hours, for example, with the time difference. So I think that really helped speeding up the process.
You know, I think there is a certain detail or certain important part of that answer that I should stress is that you can be absolutely the best mixer on the planet, but you are not the mind reader. Composer's perspective of the music is slightly different than yours. So when you work hand in hand and you think, okay, the cellos are actually strong enough, but the guy who composed it and who listened it many times and has the partition in front of me or him says, no, please, they should be, let's say, more dedicated, whatever else should be done. So in other words, those two perceptions are different enough to be very difficult to be explained in writing. It only works if we both hear and see the same. And I can tell you, Mathew, please give me more trumpets or whatever I need, more or less. That is exactly how it worked. Once we reconnected, we spent quite a time together. But that was like going from note to almost note to note and adjusting all that. And it was very interesting. I mean, the final result, I'm very, very satisfied, as you know it, because I told it officially. So thank you very, very much for your time, for your patience, for your ability to work with me. And there is something that I would like to announce. I've made a documentary before with you. I had a documentary with John Walton. And as we are both quite satisfied with our cooperation, I had the right to announce that the Issund, the piece that we have just finished, is the first part of the trilogy. I call it Nordic Suite Trilogy. And we have announced with John that next two parts, which is Bodyguard and Kylo, will be again recorded with the Cape Town Orchestra. And I hope that you and I will meet again, and we start working hand in hand from the very first second, because it's going to speed up. It will be my pleasure to meet with you again.
Yeah, that's fantastic news, I must say, and I'm pretty sure that the work will come our way. And that I will be the one recording that. That would be a pleasure.
So thank you very, very much for your time, for the possibility to talk to you, and a message to our viewers. You guys be vigilant, because there will be more music coming, there will be more exciting events coming, there will be more meetings and discussions with those fantastic people from Cape Town, so be vigilant.